There's a big difference. There are different type of people altogether in North London and South London.
So what is the difference?
Well, in North London, people had a lot more hardship, and they were a lot tougher. In South London, life had been that little bit easier, and they were all thought they were a little bit middle class.
Well, in the sense that during the war, I presume you mean the docks got heavily bombed by the Germans.
Yes, the North London and the docks got really plastered in the early years of the war. South London didn't get much of it until much later on when the doodlebugs arrived.
Doodlebugs being the V1s?
The unmanned aircraft, which had 1,000 pounds of explosive in them. And when they ran out of fuel, they dropped down and made a big bang.
Yeah, and they weren't obviously guided very well, so they were as likely to hit South London as North London. Yeah,
well, the reason they hit South London was because they...
Oh, shit. Sorry. Could we stop a minute?
Carry on till 6 anyway, shall we?
Okay, that seems good. Crystal Palace was a high hill.
Yes, very. It was a high ridge of hills that the doodlebugs had to get over the top of before they came into London. And they seemed to run out of petrol after they got over the hill and landed all over the place.
Yeah.
It was quite strange, really, because everyone got used to the idea, so that everyone went about their normal business, and if you heard a doodlebug coming, you didn't take any notice. While you could hear the engine, you were all right. If the engine stopped, then everyone dived for cover because it was going to land on you.
Yeah. So what about the people in Bow? What were they like?
Very nice. Hard-working, very nice, straightforward people.
Did you make any friends there, lad?
Not any real friends. I mean, I liked them all, got on with them all right, but I didn't make any positive friends.
But they did things for us, didn't they? I mean, I remember when I was when Mum was in hospital or whatever, the people looked after me and stuff like that.
Oh yes, they were lovely. They cared. In fact, I thought you'd all been kidnapped at one time. You all disappeared because someone had taken you home to look after you. Things like that. It was quite good the way they just took over without. It wasn't, do you want us to do this or that? They just took over.
And wasn't there an Irish woman who was very, very friendly? One of the Irish women who knew.
Yes, well,
Aileen or something.
Who?
Aileen was her name.
Can't remember. But there were. Yes, there was an Irish woman there, but I can't remember much about it. Your brain's not as good as it used to be, you know.
Well, Dad, it was a long time ago. There's no reason why you should remember. I just thought I might jog your memory. What about Brush? What was he like?
He was a nice man, but he had difficulties because he'd been in a German concentration camp and shattered his nerves a bit. So, but he was a nice enough man.
How on earth did he get out of the concentration camp?
Quite simple, really. During the First World War, he'd been awarded an Iron Cross Second Class when he was fighting us at the front. So when he went into the concentration camp, he knew that Hitler had also been given an Iron Cross Second Class in the First World War. So he got permission to write to him and saying, as fellow members of the same organisation, the Iron Cross organisation, didn't he think it was wrong to put him in here? And they let him out.
Probably not because Hitler intervened, but probably because they intercepted the letter and they got scared.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Because Hitler wasn't like that, was he?
Well, I never met him, but I think that my feeling is that Hitler was a stooge. My feeling is that the German generals and the German autocrats were desperate to get something moving, and the way to get things moving is to have an enemy. And you've got to remember that at that time, the early days of Hitler, Germany was chaos. People were starving to death because we pinched everything that they got after war in reparations. They didn't have any trains or anything. One city became I can't remember. One city became an independent communist state for a while, and if you want to get something organised, you've got to have an enemy. You've got to have someone you've got to get prepared because they're going to come and get you. And then in the end you have to go and get them. But that's how things work.
Right. So Brush spent several years in a concentration camp.
Well, he spent some time. I don't think it was years, but months probably.
And then he managed to get out.
Yes. And he jumped on a train and headed for the French coast to get across to England because he thought he'd be safe here.
How on earth did he get a job at Chelsea Flour Mills?
Well, when he was first arrived in England, he was automatically, as a German citizen, sent to, I think it was the Isle of Man. They were all put on there, it was a sort of a camp, until they could sort them out to see who were spies and who were genuine refugees. And when he was there, he met several people and became friends, and one or two of those people ended up buying Chelsea Flour Mills. Don't ask me where the money came from, but they got it from somewhere. And Brush got a job, I think he had a few shares too, but he got the job on the packaging department.
I think he knew about packaging machinery from his time in Germany as well.
Yes, he'd done something like that, yeah. Or had a little business.
And what was your role at Chelsea Flour Mills?
Well, initially I went there because I installed the machinery, packaging machinery, things like that, and every 5 minutes they were phoning up and getting me sent back there to get the machines accurate again, and in the end he offered me a job.
So he didn't know how to run them?
Nobody knew how to run the bloody things except us few people who installed them. They were buggers.
What was the pub next door famous for?
I don't know, I can't remember.
Right, okay. There was this story about the people who committed murder going in there and being served a pipe.
Oh, that's right. Yes, if you killed your wife mainly, which they did every now and again, because fighting was a part of marriage. You went down the pub and said, "I think I've killed the old woman." "Oh, here, have a pint, mate. I'll call the police." Was the general thing that happened.
What was the name of that pub?
Can't remember.
And were the people that you came across, were they kind of connected with the criminals and the craze and all that sort of thing?
There were people I knew or knew of who were villains, but most villains in that part of London were stealing out of the docks or selling the stuff that was sold out of the docks, because there was not much point. That was the most profitable thing to do. It was steal from the docks.
Because ordinary people didn't have anything that you could steal.
Yeah, I was very much hand-to-mouth living.
I remember when we went to, I think it was the Chris Street Market, and we got a spin dryer. And it was the first time you'd ever had any kind of domestic machinery.
Yeah.
Did you often go to markets?
Yes, your mum loved a market, so we used to often go and have a look round the stalls. You see, when we first arrived at the market, they obviously knew who we were. And in back slang, one market holder said to another something about us, and your mum could speak it. So she gave him a reply. Of course, we were in. That was it. You know, we were part of the community then. It was she'd made it for us.
Yeah, but the East End was supposed to be about rhyming slang rather than back slang, wasn't it?
Well, Cockney was rhyming slang, yeah, but they had their own language because, well, I suppose because of doing criminal things. You didn't want to let anyone over here what you're up to.
And some of the, I think it was Christopher was born at home.
Yes.
What was that like?
Well, I was Christopher, wasn't it?
I think so. Lindsay was born in where?
I think it was Mandy.
Oh, was it Mandy?
I think it was Mandy. And as Mandy was being born, I don't know if you remember, but there was a little back room, and then the room led off, that was the room where you boys slept, and then yeah, the little back room was where your mum and I slept, wasn't it? Yeah. And you slept in the other room in bunk beds, and I stood in there, and there'd been a problem during the war. They'd taken the Bow Bells down because they didn't want them damaged by bombs. And believe it or not, they were only just reinstalling them as Mandy was being born, and I opened the window and you could hear them testing Bow Bells. So there hadn't been any Cockneys in the sound of Bow Bells until the day she was born, because there weren't any Bow Bells. So she was the oldest Cockney about then.
I'm pretty sure that was Christopher, Dad, not Mandy.
Oh, I thought it was Mandy. There you go. Who knows?
Well, you could find out, because you could find out when the bells were hung again. But
I could find out by the certificates.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you where Mandy was born. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you? Was there sort of a camaraderie amongst the people who worked at Chelsea Farmhouse?
Yes, they were. Yeah, very much so. I remember one. The lorry drivers used to come from all over the place, bringing sacks of flour, and I remember I was in the mill one day, and one of the younger girls was outside, and she screamed. One of the drivers had got her, I think, and old Alice, who was an older lady who had one knee that went the wrong way, went out stomped out the door, knocked him over, and brought the girl back indoors. Simple as that.
Yeah. I remember on the last day that we lived in Bow, all the girls sang all those kind of 1930s and 1940s songs like We'll Meet Again and all that sort of thing.
Yes, it was a very emotional time. I was in many ways sad to leave, but they were increasing the plant and Bow wasn't big enough anymore.
Well, that was the end of that plant. They never opened it again.
No, it just got demolished in the end.
What did you used to do when you were in bow? Did you have any hobbies or anything like that?
Not really, not that I can remember. It seemed like the job took up most of my time.
Were you active in the labour movement at all?
Yeah, I wasn't very active in Bow. They didn't like me because I was a South Londoner. They didn't think people in South London belonged to the Labour Party. But I had one or two big rows with them over it. Used to occasionally go to meetings, but I was an outsider, you know, they didn't want to know.
Yeah, but in South London you were quite active in the Labour Party, weren't you?
Yes, well, it's in South London. I'd been in the Labour Party, I'd grown up in it, you see. And the older people knew my dad even. It was, you know, it was part of our life, our family, the way things went.
Did the older people tell you anything about your dad?
Not that I can remember. They're very, very respectful of him.
What was that story about him having high insteps? About the way he walked?
Can't remember.
You said sometime that you met somebody who's seen you walking and said that your dad used to
Oh,
walk.
yeah, people could recognise him from behind because he walked, by the way he walked. They said I did too, but I don't know. But he apparently walked in a way that made him recognisable.
And what exactly did you do in the Labour Party?
In London, I used to go canvassing and knocking on doors and putting leaflets through doors and all that stuff.
Did you ever stand as a councillor?
Yes, once, but I was given a safe Tory seat to stand in.
The idea being to show you actually
Give me a bit of experience.
Yeah. And did you produce a newsletter or anything like that?
Yes, I had a newsletter at one time. I did.
What was your newsletter called?
Can't remember.
Did your father ever do a newsletter?
I don't know. I don't know about that. I know they didn't like my newsletter much. They thought I was being a bit saucy, I think.
You were sort of anti-establishment then?
Yes, very much so. Well, of course, at that time, you see, we lived in one basement room in Bow.
No.
One basement room in Gypsy Road. And of course, they got so incensed at this newsletter I was writing that 3 gentlemen came round to collect all the stuff that belonged to the Labour Party, the duplicators and things, so I couldn't do it anymore. And of course, when they got there, they were, I think they were all councillors, I'm not sure about all, but they were so appalled at the way we were having to live in this place that in no time at all we got a nice council flat. So it did me a bit of good.
You were bribed, in other words?
Yeah.
Why didn't you stay in your council flat then?
Because I got this decent job in Bow and we moved over to Bow.
And in Bow, the house or the flat went with the job?
Yeah.
And
I did it for a while before we got the flat, but after a bit they thought I was worth keeping, so they did the flat up, which was the top of 2 houses, and so that they keep me.
So how on earth did you get there?
Or a tram and a bus.
But it must have been a...
Oh no, I didn't. No, I'd got a motorcycle and sidecar at that time. I used to go on the bike and a sidecar.
It's called Bessie, wasn't it? Or Betsy or something?
Yeah, I used to call it Betsy, yeah.
And what did you do? Go through the Rotherhithe Tunnel?
Yeah, I must have done, yeah.
Bloody unpleasant thing to do, go through the Rotherhithe Tunnel on a motorbike.
Didn't think about it much in those days. Everything was a bit unpleasant.
And what happened? When had you got the motorbike?
When had I got it?
Yeah, how long had you had it for before?
I don't know, quite some while, because we used to go camping with it.
Where did you go camping?
Oh, we used to go camping although we've been everywhere, but in those days it was mainly Norfolk, because it was fairly easy to get to and I knew it well. So we used to go camping in Norfolk quite a lot.
I'd have thought you'd have gone to the New Forest because you spent such a long time in the New Forest.
Yes, we did go to the New Forest now and again, but it was not very suitable for children, I thought. Whereas you could get a campsite in Norfolk, which was open country, and the kids could run about more.
I remember 2 or 3 years we went down to that town in what's the name of it?
Fordingbridge?
No, on the Thames estuary. I can't even remember.
I've just thought of the name of the campsite in the New Forest. It was called Sandy Balls. I don't know why it was called Sandy Balls, but that's what it was called.
And is that where you went when you were snake catching?
Yeah. Yeah, but quite often when we were snake catching, we had a little 2-man biv and we used to set it up in the woods somewhere out the way, you know. Providing you've got a stream nearby so you could get some water, you're all right.
And it was okay to drink from the streams? I'd have thought that would have been dangerous.
Well, the animals didn't die.
Well, that's true. The ponies managed to survive it, didn't they?
Yeah, well, and nor did we, John and I. We're still here, both of us.
Yeah, and you used to go there quite often then.
Yeah, weekends even.
Why did you go there?
Because we liked the snakes. We liked them. We used to collect the snakes and take them, bring them back into the zoo.
Why on earth would the zoo want snakes?
To feed to the bigger snakes.
And what sort of snakes did you catch?
Adders and grass snakes.
I used to catch adders as well.
Quite a lot, yeah.
I would have thought that the bigger the animals would have been a bit, adders would not be good for animals to eat.
Well, the zoo seemed to be pleased with them.
And did you do that for a long time?
Yes, yeah. Did it for several years.
And
of course, we were both fellows of the Zoological Society.
How on earth did you get that gig?
How did I become a fellow?
No. How did you get the job of supplying snakes to the zoo?
I really don't know. We were both very interested in the reptile house, and of course we'd spent a lot of time in the country and knew the bloke in charge of the reptile house. I can't remember his name, and he had a girl as an assistant, which amazed me, a pretty young girl in amongst all the snakes, which I thought was a bit strange. But we said, why didn't they have any adders or grass snakes? They said, well, the other snakes eat them. Oh dear, do you want some more? Oh yes. So we started bringing them snakes.
And John then got a job working for the RSPCA.
I got him the job.
How did you get that job?
Well, the local RSPA clinic was supported by charity, fundraising. And the people in charge of the fundraising were a family I knew vaguely. And they knew about me and being a fellow and all the rest of it. And they offered me the job of being the clinic manager. And I said, I thought John would be better at it. So he took the job. And when you think, when I started going out with your mother, her best friend was sort of automatically paired up with my best friend. So that's how John got married.
So John and Beryl were after you and Mum?
Yes, they were. Well, you see, John was my best pal, and she was your mum's best pal, and we sort of made a foursome.
And why didn't you take the job? Because that had been a wonderful job for you, Dad.
No, I didn't. It was the job he ended up with I would have loved, but the clinic wouldn't, because all they seemed to do in clinic was put animals down because somebody got fed up with them. And I didn't think I could do that.
So these days they'd have a vet doing that, Dad.
Yeah, that would they didn't then.
So that's what John did when he first went to work for the RSPCA. He just kept putting animals down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember being there on one occasion when a woman came in with a dog and the baby, and she said, "Now we've got the baby, we can't keep them both." And he said, "Which one do you want me to put down?"
Yes, well that must have pissed her off quite a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. What else? Your grandfather, he had other grandsons, one of whom was in the Air Force, didn't he?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Did you ever meet him?
Yes, I met him a few times, but I never got very friendly with any of the my father's family.
Why was that?
I think mainly it was my mother's influence. She didn't like him very much. It was that bloody club. They spent all their time in the club, and it's where she'd weaned my father out of it, and she didn't want me getting there.
Well, there's an irony there that she was terribly admiring of her mother, who obviously kept the family together, and yet her mother used to famously be the local winemaker and make all these devilish brews, and yet she had this kind of thing against the club and the alcohol.
Yeah, I remember going there as a little boy, but yeah. And then, of course, you see, once we went to live in, came back from the war, we got a house in or a flat in Wolfington Road, and virtually backing onto the house was the tennis club, and you could be a member of the tennis club without playing tennis because they'd got a nice bar. So I, in no time at all, as soon as I was old enough, I was a member of the bleeding tennis club, so it didn't help a bit, did it?
No. And did you ever meet your great uncle, your grandfather's brother?
No, I can't remember. Oh yes, Teddy, yeah. He lived, where did he live? Down in the country, a little town, I can't remember the name of it. But yes, I met them several times. He had a daughter, but I think something happened to her. But yeah, he was nice. I liked him.
But presumably the daughter would have been the same sort of age as your parents, not your age.
Yeah.
Is that right?
I think she was a bit younger, but I think she was a bit doolally. Not all, not very sensible. And so there was no more, his side of the family sort of died out.
But what about his wife? What was she like?
I can't really remember. I can remember him, but I think she was kept in the background a bit.
What was he like?
A nice little man, a littleish man, bustler, and a bit hail fellow, well met, but yes, good, nice man. Yeah.
And he was a printer too, wasn't he?
He was a printer's reader.
Oh, that's a cut above, is it?
I think so. Yeah, you didn't get ink on your hands.
Yeah, so he was sort of somewhere between the journalists and the printers.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was like proofreading. You'd you didn't, once something was printed, somebody had to proofread it to see that it was all right to send out.
But he'd still been a member of the Freemasons and all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And this place you went to, could you remember where it was?
I'm trying to remember.
Was it in Kent or Essex?
Essex.
It was in Essex.
Not too far from Crawley, I think.
Can you remember how your mother took you there? Would it be by train or something like that?
I think it was coach, but I can't really remember.
No. And, okay, I think I pretty much all questioned out, really.
Yeah, covered it.
Well, I not covered it, but I mean, I've just got tired and done enough.